Director, along with Judy Ireland of Performance Poets of the Palm Beaches, and we want to welcome you to our end of the year reading. Since 2014, Performance Poets of the Palm Beaches has been hosting poetry readings in Palm Beach County with featured poets followed by an open mic. Now, because of Zoom, we are able to expand our audience reach and invite poets from other regions, many of you who have already featured for us. However, South Florida has a very robust poetry scene, and we have been and continue to be committed to providing a local performance showcase for our talented poets. Are there any poetry announcements? And now, Susan, you would go ahead. Yeah, you're still muted. I'll come back to you, right? And then you can make your announcement. Is there somebody else who has news of some sort, publishing or otherwise? All right. Fine. Susan, when you are able to unmute, you can tell us about your book a little bit. So Performance Poets, we welcome all poets, lovers of poetry, and lovers of poets. Our featured readers read for approximately 20 to 25 minutes. And I'll talk a little bit about the open mic when we get closer to it. Just a couple of pieces of information about Zoom etiquette. And I'm sorry that I have to say this, but if you're going to eat or get up and move around or, you know, undress, hard to say, you know, what people might be doing, I would just say turn the camera off. And we would appreciate that until you're finished with your business. Thank you, Susan. I see the link in there. And so Susan has a book coming out from Finishing Line Press, and I believe it's in January, at the end of January. Isn't that right, Susan?
Excuse me. Yes, it's January 21st is when it's supposed to be hit the world, you know. So okay. it's my first real book, so it's all a new experience for me too. But it's been available for pre-sale, but it'll be, you know, on various sites by that time, and I'll have an actual copy and everything. So.
Oh, good. And you will you be reading from it today? Read a couple of poems.
I do. I have a couple of poems that I will read from that to give you.
Wonderful. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No. All right. Well, then let us move forward. So we have a robust open mic, which is great. And we have two featured poets as usual. One who hails from North Carolina. And Michael, you were down here in South Florida at one point, weren't you? And
yes, I was. Right? I used to live in Miami.
I
lived in Miami for 30 years.
Yikes.
So I was here for a while. There for a while.
Okay, and also we have Kristine Thurston, who's also a local talent. So let me read Michael's intro and we'll get started. Michael Hettich was born in Brooklyn, New York, and grew up in New York City and its suburbs. He has lived in upstate New York, Colorado, Northern Florida, Vermont, Miami, and Black Mountain, North Carolina, where he now lives with his family. His books of poetry include The Micah Mine, St. Andrews Press, 2021, winner of the Lena Schul Book Award, To Start an Orchard, Press 53, 2019, Bluer and More Vast, Hysterical Press, that's Hysterical Press, 2018, The Frozen Harbor, Red Dragonfly Press, 2017, Systems of Vanishing, University of Tampa, 2014, The Animals Beyond Us, New Rivers, 2011, and Like Happiness, Anhinga, 2010. His work has appeared widely in such journals as Plowshares, Orion, The Literary Review, Tri-Quarterly, Prairie Schooner, The Sun, Witness, and Poetry East. In addition to the Lena Schul Prize, his awards include 3 Florida Individual Artists Fellowships, a Florida Book Award, the Tampa Review Prize in Poetry, and the David Martinson Meadowhawk Prize. He has served on the board of several organizations, including AIRI, Artists in Residence in the Everglades, and WHALE, Word and Image Lab. Hettich holds a PhD in literature and taught at the college level for many years. He often collaborates with visual artists, musicians, and fellow writers. And his website, Judy will put into the chat box for
Yeah,
us.
she
if you
did.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did it. She did it. Yeah, she did it
Yeah.
already.
All
So,
right, perfect.
thank you.
Okay, Michael, please go ahead.
Okay, Susanna, thank you very much. And thank you, Susanna and Judy, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to read to you guys again. I think I read a little less than a year ago with Jen Karetnik. So thank you for inviting me to read. I'm amazed at that introduction. I think I wrote it, but wow, I got to cut that thing back. It seems a little pretentious to me, but okay, so I apologize for that. But thank you. I'm going to read. I'm going to start by reading maybe 5 or 6 or so poems from a new book, which isn't published yet, but I just finished, and it's called "And Make Them Shine." And then I'm going to try to go to a few poems from the Micah Mine. Maybe read some that I haven't been reading very much lately, and then maybe even go to one more. We'll see how much time this all takes. So here are some poems from And Make Them Shine. The first one is called Core. Core. The hawk in the white pine shivers, hunched into itself like a state of being we might think had vanished if we've been playing too long with our gadgets or making arrangements to assure our perfect happiness sometime in the future. The wind that tossed cut down trees remains a ghost inside our furniture, like the antique notion of a soul. And ancient tides drew the swirls in the stones that line our paths. Scars that mark the seasons our ancestors lived, etched like tree rings into the secrets we don't even know we're keeping, a dream that woke us to forget, or a blue that dazzles the sky as only nothing can do in the morning. That's a hard one to read. I'm gonna have to practice that because the line breaks work on the page, but in reading, it seems a little bit like we lose our connection, maybe. I'm not sure. So that's the first poem in the book, by the way. So then here's a poem called Stir. I don't really have anything to say about poems. That's always a difficulty for me. Since basically I work on writing, every day, pretty much every day, and I'll find something and write it, but it won't be like, well, it came from. It often won't be that it came from something that I experienced. It's more something maybe that I experience as I write the poem. So here's another one. It's called Stir. Sometimes a breeze will pick up between two people who don't even know each other and blow between them while they stand in line or sit in a classroom. The breeze feels pleasant as it enters the folds in their clothing, but they don't pay it much attention. It's a mammal-scented breeze, a breeze reminiscent of mushrooms and rotting leaves in a pile at the edge of the path that leads to a bend in the creek where you sometimes take off your clothes for a dip after you've finished your schoolwork. You sit naked in the sun until you've dried off. Then you walk home feeling as fresh as a rock. Those birds will never judge you, but the deer that come to that pool to drink will smell your body for days until the first heavy rain. Look at them, standing there, soaked through, but still so elegant as they bend to rip out the grass or nibble at the leaves that keep your pool hidden. Like this breeze that's so private, you don't even know what you're feeling, as now for the first time, you notice her hair, the way she unfolds her delicate hands and sighs as she buttons her sweater, shivering a little from the chill. The ache. This is sitting in a dentist's office. Obviously, the poem will tell us that. It's called Ache. The ache. I think this would be in South Florida too, probably. So the ache. We don't mean to come to the end of our lives before they come to us, but we do, she says, sitting beside me in the crowded waiting room, waiting to be called in. I nod as though I understand, which I do, but I don't say anything since my teeth have been aching. It's a small pain, of course, in the vast world of hurt, but distracting nonetheless, since I'd rather be outside paying attention to the butterflies we see in this season, as of course I want to know which birds are flying south or north outside this office. I want to listen to their songs, as though by listening I might reverse the direction of extinctions harrowing our planet, though I know that's only a lazy man's dream. Now she's fiercely brushing her hair, grunting as she pulls. She shakes her head and smiles, getting strands of hair all over my sweater, as everyone else stares at the TV or leafs through ancient magazines. And when she starts humming too loudly not to be trying to say something urgent, I look up from my phone, I forget myself for a moment and smile, as though that were enough. Of course it's not, but she smiles back anyway, as though she were forgiving me, just as my name is called. Thank you. Here's one. This is called The River. What can I say about this? I'll say honestly that I like the way this poem shifts and turns as it moves. So I don't know how it'll sound when I read it, but to my mind, when I wrote it, I was happy with, that was what I was happy with in this poem. So it goes like this. The river. I'm taking a pause from the person I've been for most of my life and starting to answer, let me do it again. I'm taking a pause from the person I've been for most of my life and starting to enter the man I've been only occasionally, even the man I've only pretended to be, a stranger I've hardly imagined. My wife has decided to do the same. We've agreed to try out our new selves and meet back here in a few days to talk things over, perhaps make some permanent adjustments. Our children might be strangers soon. Our old dog already ignores us. The river that runs by our house has been rising for weeks now. We've been cleaning out our closets, tossing things into the swirl. Old books we thought we should love, classics that only bored us as they bored everyone for centuries. Photo albums full of squinting strangers, dress shoes that pinched, overstuffed pillows that made our necks stiff. And then one morning, a herd of deer tried to swim across to our side. So many hungry animals have been swept away. Even our faces in the mirror seem to have been swept away now by that rising river and by our yearning. I can only be naked, though I'm trying to locate the clothes I wore when I was a man who sported perfect teeth and a head full of hair, the kind who tells the truth when he lies, or vice versa. I can't remember now, though I'm sure it must matter to someone. And this one, thank you. Thank you. This one's called Mercy. I'm not sure what I can say about it. I'm not sure how it's going to sound when I read it aloud either, but let's try it. It's called Mercy. How many days, she asked, will it take you to take apart the engine? And how many weeks will it take you to build the train you promised to take us away on, to visit the towns we've imagined being happy in, but have never visited? Those villages we know so well from the books you read out loud while I look out the window at the dull street we live on, in this dull town full of dog-faced women in raincoats and men whose bellies emerge from their golf shirts like something that would scare us to waking if we saw it in a dream. When will you fix the lights in the bedroom and get the mice out of the plumbing? We could climb up the sides of the mountains we've seen on our calendars. We could breathe the thin air until the world thinned too. Yet still we'd keep hiking, pulling each other up above tree line, then sliding quickly down to a cafe we remember from that book we loved so much. We never finished reading it since we kept turning the pages back, rereading favorite passages. Flushed from our adventure, we'd sit drinking wine and finishing the story, then closing the book and slipping it back in the shelf. But the shelf is covered in mouse droppings, and the roof is leaking again now from this incessant rain. And we don't have umbrellas, and no one else is home in this entire town, so no one will answer when we knock on their doors for help. We'll keep running from front door to front door, hoping for mercy, maybe even laughing a little as we splash, and maybe even taking off our clothes to marvel at how pale our bodies have grown. That one goes somewhere. Okay, and here's another one. This is the last one I'm going to read from my my new manuscript, and it's called "The Shape of Moving." The shape of moving. Someone traces the wind back to where it started, back before the dinosaurs, and wins a big prize, and ends up committing suicide somewhere out in the desert, which has been getting hotter by the day. It's where the wind ends, his note says. And no one finds him. For so long, he's been eaten by insects and vultures, all but his bones and cap, stained by his sweat, just enough to identify his DNA. As I'm reading his story, the woman I love most in the world comes into the kitchen and tells me her life has been wasted, then looks out the window to marvel at the blossoming flowers no one has planted, the buzzing bees no one has summoned. Yesterday, a neighbor stopped by to tell me the yellow jacket wasps were swarming through the woods, stinging every human they could find. And when we wondered why they were so restive, he ventured a theory that all the new houses were disturbing the soil where the wasps hibernate. And he wondered if they thought somehow, if wasps think at all, that they might sting us away. When he left, we packed up a bottle of wine and some glasses and walked up to the man-made lake at the edge of the woods, a mile or so away. We sat and watched the evening blow across the water like a small bird might do before landing in the trees on the other side to sing. And so we drank our wine and listened for a while, then slowly walked back through the darkness. Okay, so that's a sample of poems from my new manuscript. And now let me read a few. Let me see what time it is. I'll read a few poems from this book, The Mica Mine. And the first one I'll read, I have been reading quite often. This is one that comes directly from my sitting in my woods and listening to the world around me. And it's called The Hive. The Hive. Someone else's loss, buzzing through the garden like the bee that got under your shirt and landed in your chest hair, but didn't sting. Someone's grief right there like a stone in the almost raining afternoon with the smell of horse sweat and mowed grass and hot asphalt. You held my hand as we stood at the fence and called to those horses and felt the first raindrops and smelled the cooling road. Someone else's tragedy passing like an awkward truck, climbing our dirt road, unbalanced by the dead woman's bulky furniture and the potholes. Someone else looking out her window at the strangers standing on the road, squinting at her door as though expecting it to open, then walking slowly on. Down the hill, trucks rip out the clear-cut tree stumps, and we think of the coyote who slung across our yard with a squirrel in its jaws, and we think of the bears at our garbage. There were birds calling out like children, playing hide and seek, pretending to be hurt somewhere deeper in the woods. And you tell me you love me like fingernails, like hair. You love me like breath when you're sleeping, wrapped up in dust, while the crows in our closets make darkness from the clothes we never wear, and our bodies start crying out in languages the trees might dance to as though they were singing. Thank you. And I think my time is almost up if I'm looking at my clock correctly, my watch correctly, but I want to read one I just thought of as I was reading that last one, which is called, it's called The Distant Waterfall. I may have read this another time for some of you. So I hope it's not bad to read it again. This is one that comes from the bears that come to it. We see bears all the time outside our house, and they kind of sometimes try to come inside the house in the garage and stuff. And so this comes just literally from a morning of waking up and seeing this really nice sized bear right outside. And then it goes somewhere else, I hope. Drink of water. And it's called The Distant Waterfall. It's sort of prosy, I think, but still gets us something, I hope. The Distant Waterfall. The big bear appears at your living room window, so close you can study his pigeon-toed walk, his delicate steps around the potted plants on your back wall. He sniffs at the base of the dogwood where you dump your morning coffee grinds. You watch him cock his ears when he hears you naked behind the sliding glass door. Now he moves up the slope across the garden, pausing to sniff new flowers and slurp a quick drink from the bird bath. He doesn't knock it over. Then down to the carport, outside the garage where you stand now, still naked, to watch him. There's a big bag of garbage on the floor beside you, mussel shells and fish bones. So you thump on the door and growl like the fearsome old man you've suddenly become. And he seems to believe you, turns around, turns away, and saunters up into the woods, back up into the mountains, just starting to green with spring, where you wandered yesterday, looking for the waterfall whose roar you thought you could hear in the distance, but never seemed to get closer to, no matter how you bushwhacked and listened, then bushwhacked again, until you realized it was probably just the ringing in your ears, or the distant highway, or simply the beautiful place you've imagined finding for yourself and your family to visit and be happy. And you'd pretty soon be lost if you kept on looking deeper, moving further off the trail. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.
How about, I just said, could we just unmute and didn't unmute?
Yeah.
Could we unmute and give
Okay.
Michael a round of applause?
Nice work,
Yeah.
Mike.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Nice work, man.
Thank you.
Fantastic as usual, Michael.
Thank you.
I know Judy will open up the chat so that if you'd like to comment on Michael's work, now would be the time to do that. And we will move on to our next featured reader.
I would like to interject something here about Michael's work. I've been a fan of his since the early 80s, going all the way back in South Florida, readings down here. And you heard some of his poems here, and in my opinion, they're just fantastic. And I could vouch for whatever else he has in these, all of his books. I have many of his books, maybe most. And I could tell you that they're all just as good. You know, sometimes you hear they read their best work and then you get the book, it's okay. But these were, every one of them, all of them, just fantastic. Love his work.
Man, thank you. Thank you so much, Lenny.
Thanks, Lenny.
And, thank you for everything you've done and for your work. And all these years we've known each other, really, it's always been a pleasure to be with you and know you. and share our work with each other. Thank you.
And thank you, Michael. As I said, Judy has the chat box open, and if you would mute yourselves now, that would be great. You can certainly comment on Michael's work in the chat if you choose to. And I will now introduce Kristine Thurston, our next reader. Kristine Thurston has been published in the Nantucket Review and Focus, a journal for lesbians. She has won honorable mention at the Marblehead Arts Festival in 1986. She's had poems included as part of Yom Kippur services at Congregation Beth El in Sudbury, Massachusetts, and Temple Israel of West Palm Beach. She was invited to read in February 2021 in a joint poetry art Zoom reading with Turtle Studios Poetry Lab. And with that, we give you Kristine Thurston.
Thank you. So I'm going to begin. This is the only even remotely religious poem. It's not really religious, but it's a poem written for the Jewish New Year of 5782, which just began this past September. Through my window, I watch a solitary wood stork, head low in the lush green reeds. Suddenly, swallows are looping in ordered chaos, chasing dragonflies. Bird and insect blur in mid-flight. I send up a silent prayer. Our safety too feels fleeting in the second pandemic year, and yet, the way airlifts swing, we are supported by 1,000 threads that connect us to community. Close or distant, we sing a new song this season, a dissonant harmony of hope. I have relatives in Sweden and grew up with relatives in Sweden and a Swedish grandmother. This poem is called in Swedish. The word for socks is strumpor, which makes me think of strumpets, free women relishing buttery crumpets in Victorian London. I lie on the bed practicing my pronunciation, attempt to say the word seven, phew, jumbled consonants that no one outside of Sweden can pronounce. You walk softly back and forth between the kitchen and the bathroom. I should be making dinner. In Swedish, kök is the word for kitchen. Two little dots above the O make it sound like shirk, which is what I feel I'm doing now. It may benefit the brain to learn another language, but it doesn't get dinner on the table. I hear cabinets bang and glasses clink. I am not a blonde meatball rolling sex goddess. I would rather spend an evening with Dickens or Dickinson. I would rather do the dishes than assemble little cups of ingredients for online recipes. I used to challenge my friends to say my middle name, Ingeborg. My mormor read Swedish books, my dolls in a circle around demitasse cups filled with sweet light coffee. Words and pastel pictures blur together. The word for shoes is score, which sounds like sure. My friends could never say my middle name right. My father's family wouldn't say it at all. Foreign was foreign in their eyes, and my mother looked dark and asked too many questions. This is, I have a lot of fun with prose poems. This was from a prompt in a workshop a few years ago. Love on a slant is kissing on the deck of a ship running from a hurricane. It's Bertolt Brecht's Sex in a Rowboat. It's being 15 and listening to Woo Woo Ginsberg over a transistor radio at 2 a.m. The smell of the leather case, the little brown punched holes. It's the love that sticks like little needles. Love hopping on one foot while throwing stones. T-shirts, soft as mole bellies. It's love with lint between its toes. It's Andy Hooker home from Vietnam. The love that doesn't know how to pitch or dance or wear a pretty pink tutu, but understands the secret of open muscles in a bouillabaisse, bright with saffron and scented with Venus. And this is a little erotic haiku. Lips to lips, lips to lips, this kiss is an asterisk of bliss. And that's going to be included in a oral history interview that I did in the fall of 2019 for the History Project in Boston, which is assembling many, many interviews with people who are documenting the gay history of Boston area in the 1970s and 80s and 90s. It was my honor to be included as part of that process. This is a poem set in 2016, and it's after the election, but it also references back to the time when AIDS was just beginning to take its toll on communities. Hope is the thing with feathers. Emily Dickinson, number 314. November 2016, Florida, Route 95, a week after Election Day. I'm listening to an interview with the activist Cleve Jones. He tells us, the movement saved my life. He says, take nothing for granted. June 1981, Boston. We're in your car, stopped in traffic. You turned to me, almost an aside. Did you hear? Did you hear about the men in San Francisco, New York? Hearing Cleve today, I think of you. May 1993, Milton, Massachusetts, a party in honor of your lover's quilted square. He's one of thousands mourned in color and symbol and careful stitches. You talk about the ceremony held on the National Mall. We reminisce about the place we used to work. I don't ask you how you are. November 2016, I sit in a parking lot in Delray Beach, listening to Cleve. His words hearten me, remind me that hope can be ruckus, rudeness, body bags laid out in front of City Hall, how it can keep breathing even when plucked and bare, how a single patchwork square can be joined with another and another and another, story to story, name to name. And the Names Project Foundation can be found at www.aidsquilt.org. It's well worth looking up. This is an ekphrastic poem, this next one, and it's a photo of two children who are salvaging on one of the huge garbage dumps that are the recipient of our refuse from the Western world and going to other places. Salvaging. Light begins it, darkness ends it, and light and dark and the rainbow of labels that we trade for a cup of rice and a little tea. How beautiful that this job needs our fingers, our hands and feet, whole and smooth and warm. We are so fast, sparkles fly from the bottles as we toss them where they go. There is an order to everything. There's a source of all that we do, but we don't have time to think about beginnings or endings. How beautiful the early morning hours before our fingers cramp and our shoulders scream, stop, stop, stop. We are masters of keeping going. We are masters of waiting to pee. We are masters of agility as the cylinders roll and shift and fall out beneath us. Our arms and legs are hard as the green wood ladder that holds us up. We know how to be strong. Once we watched a pair of quick little monkeys steal nuts. We could beat them if it came to a contest. My brother knows all the secrets. I have one dress. It is such a bright red that I pretend that it is the sunrise. And we are at work before the sun comes up. But once we saw the stars, and someday we will see them again. Some bottles still have a bit of water in the bottom. It gleams like our memory of stars. It whispers like the sound our salvage makes beneath our bare feet. What a wonder that our toes can grip and hold and keep us safe and that we are together, and that too is a miracle. You know, the next two are a couple of personal poems that reference family. This one's called Dreams of Peacetime. They met in a midsummer night's dream. After the war, dreams could come true again. My mother quit high school in 1944. In her picture, she's looking at the audience. After the war, dreams could come true again. My father used to lie on the deck of his destroyer. In my mother's picture, she's looking at the audience. She'd had a dozen jobs by the end of the war. My father used to dream on the deck of the destroyer, reading Marlowe, Tennessee Williams, Shakespeare. My mother had a dozen jobs by the end of the war. Even in high school, acting was her dream. Reading Marlowe, Tennessee Williams, Shakespeare, copies borrowed from the library. Acting had always been her dream. He'd gone bald during the war. It made him shy. My mother borrowed plays from the library. On stage, he became unafraid and bold. On shipboard, he'd gone into himself, becoming shy. They felt like they were in a play the day they met. On stage, my father became unafraid, bold enough to ask my mother out for coffee. They felt like they were in a scene the day they met. Around them, all their friends were getting married. He asked my mother out for coffee, so different from anyone else she knew. Around them, all their friends were getting married. Her mother was born in Sweden. She was different from anyone else he knew. She'd quit high school in 1944. Her mother was born in another country. They met in a Midsummer Night's Dream. For a long time, I had a quarter of my family that I knew nothing about because my grandfather had lost his restaurant during the Depression and became very morose, and the family had, he had many problems after that point, but through a series of things, I was able to trace my family, and it turns out that I actually, he'd always told the story that everyone was dead, and it turned out that, no, I have a large family in northern Norway up above the Arctic Circle. This is Senja Island, which is an absolutely stunningly beautiful place north of Lofoten Island, if people know where that is. Senja Island. We hike a narrow path towards Vasselvik. The four of us, me, my Florida heat-loving husband, along with Gunhild and Leif, my two second cousins, discovered in July a year ago, after a lifetime of secrets. We hike a path that's lush and green. Who knew that the coast-hugging Gulf Stream made these Arctic islands look the way I imagined Ireland might look? We are on a path to the site where our great-grandparents, Christina and Jakob Mikkelsen, prospered and fished and birthed 12 children at the turn of the last century. 11 lived. The house is long gone, savaged by storm and harsh winters off the Arctic Sea. In 1922, Magnus stepped off the Gunnar Heiberg to marry a young Swedish nanny that he met in Boston, Massachusetts. Magnus was ninth in his family, living in what was not much more than a hut without indoor plumbing. No wonder my grandfather shed all this beauty like an eider duck shaking water from its wings. All word of Magnus vanished in 1934. He was mourned here, never found. We teeter on the foundation stones, all that's left except for my numerous cousins and relations spread out on various Arctic islands and down into the south as far as Oslo. But I stand on a heap of fallen stones and look out at a pebbled beach and snow-capped mountains ringing the green, green island with fog tumbling down the slopes and approaching like a wave. So it's time to turn and thread our way along the path past a waterfall purling into the ocean. Back at the house that Leif and Gunhild's father built, we reassemble the past like a puzzle that we each have half the pieces to, putting it together, making it whole. The next poems are about my son, who died in September of 2019. And I'm hoping at some point to have enough poems and put them in a chapbook. This one's Un Transito Chico. My son is adopted from Chile. I also have a daughter who's adopted. Un Transito Chico. We crossed the equator to bring you home. You charmed the whole plane all the way back from Chile to Miami. People smiling, calling you un transito chico. You were 4 when a brain tumor the size of a lemon nearly broke us. A tumor that had been invisibly, quietly, slowly growing. But you made friends of nurses, doctors, and rollerblading radiologists. After surgery came radiation. I wrote you a book about Xavier and Ray, the X-ray twins. Then, having failed that, in the words of your oncologists, chemo saved you, but not your love for chocolate. The tumor left you blind, but like a bat, agile and quick. You always knew where you were and could find your way home from anywhere, except for that last lightning-fast stroke that took your life 27 years after the oncologists told us you would die. Every day was not good. Some were crap. And we had fights, some of them bad ones, the way all parents and children do. But our bond was like a strong, glossy vine. It stretched and held. You lost vision, balance, mobility, speech, but won over hospital roommates, therapy dogs, chaplains, the grumpy woman in a hairnet who served lunch at the rehab unit, all crying babies, and an off-tune folk singer. You'd think you would feel distant now, off on your new travel adventure that we are trying to put off indefinitely ourselves. But some part of you keeps reaching back to us through space and stars and vibrant dark energy, still connected to us by fine, unseen threads. This is another pantone. I really enjoy pantones. This is a pantone for Ben. You want to go home, but still can't walk. Wordless, you tell me you are done. How can you be done at 25? Some days sitting up in bed for you is too much trouble. Wordless, you tell me you are done. When was the last time I cried? Some days sitting up in bed for you is too much trouble. You have your good days and your bad. When was the last time I cried? The trach and feeding tube stayed in for weeks. You have your good days and your bad. The doctors tell us this, then tell us that. The trach and feeding tube stayed in for weeks, so you could only talk to us with your eyes. The doctors tell us this, then tell us that. Has it been a hot summer or a cold? You could only talk to us with your eyes. Shouldn't someone here help you to communicate? Has it been a wet summer or has it been a dry one? Would sign language let you tell us what you need? Shouldn't someone here help you to communicate? We had to beg your friends to come and visit. Would sign language let you tell us what you need? Hospital windows dim sounds from the city below. We had to beg your friends to come and visit. How can you be done at 25? Hospital windows dim sounds from the city below. You want to go home, but still can't walk. And I'm not sure if this is a prose poem or a rant. I guess it's a rant. I see you sitting in that wheelchair and I rage inside, right up to my hair. No, even my hair is raging, flaring out like I'm riding on the beach in a red convertible. I hate these strokes. You're only 24. The treatments that saved your life then spent the next 20 years crawling like termites up into your brain and chewing your arteries into little bloody explosions in your skull. They're like sheep eaten by wolves, and all we find are tufts of wool in the briars and a leg bone in the stream. I know you can talk to us through your laptop and iPad and stupid communication device that the makers of couldn't even realize that sometimes people who can't be understood might also be blind and need Braille to navigate the keys. At least they might put in the little guide bumps on the F and J, the blind person's buddies on the keyboard. But I just want to hear you talk again. When I remember thinking that I used to think you talk too much, I want to go back and scream into my own ears until I'm deaf. I want to stand on a soapbox in the marketplace and yell obscenities day after day. I want to rant till you can see the stars again. This is Street of Crocodiles, prose poem version. We're still on Ben's book here. Manhattan, early Saturday morning. a long-awaited weekend away. We picture our son safe in his apartment, his aide Anthony coming in bright and my cell phone shivers. Anthony hasn't arrived. Ben tells us he made his breakfast himself. Ben is in a wheelchair, can't walk well, see well, talk well. Ben is 24 and has already had a third stroke. Ben reassures us he's okay though. He can do it. Stay or go. Surely Anthony will call back or show up, embarrassed, ready to work. Noon, Museum of Modern Art. I sit crouched on a bench staring at my phone. This is Anthony. Please leave a message. But we've left message after message. We're here to see a show of the Brothers Quay video art, Street of Crocodiles. In the darkness of the room behind me, white against black blurs into gray scale. The marionette's father's stiff hands are pale as roots. His eyes, blue marble, screws grow out of the ground like beans. This is Anthony. How long have we waited for this weekend away? Where the hell is Anthony? In a restaurant in the village, we argue about calling the police. What if Anthony's lying on his floor unconscious? This is Anthony. What if we could have saved him and we did nothing? This mailbox is full. And I'm keeping track. I think I have room for a couple more. I'm going to skip this one because you've heard it before. This one is a mock pantone. And please excuse me, I am not making light of torture or what. We had neighbors who were extremely loud in their renovations to their bathroom. But in the end, we decided we would renovate our own bathroom, which is just finished now. This is remodeling pantone. Upstairs, the banging is incessant, unending. Our neighbors say a new bathroom is a necessity. Isn't necessity another word for toilet? Another item that, of course, they must replace. Their new bathroom is a necessity, they say. Now there is a whining, a screaming from up there. Another item that they must replace. Who are these unholy contractors from hell? Now there is a whining, a screaming from up there, as if they were holding someone by their hair, which these unholy contractors from hell might well do. They could be capable of any violent act. I think they're holding someone by their hair. Good God, waterboarding someone in the toilet. These neighbors could be capable of any sort of act, not just this banging, incessant, unending. And I'm going to end with a love poem that I think I've read it for this group before, but I think it's nice to end with a love poem. And it's a Florida poem. Palm sonnet. The way warmth sets the roots of the palm tree, so at night the curve of your sleeping back draws me over to wrap you shoulder and knee. I don't want you to wake and feel the lack of my presence, a dream of future loss, of keen grief. How does it change us, this new place? These seasons that are only shades of green, rivers that slowly sculpt this low, flat space. Tonight, the trill of frogs is loud and shrill. Summer is coming and the rainy time. Canals and lakes begin to rise and fill, and insects buzz in long, repeating rhyme. Here winter moves with subtlety to spring, and seasons wear smooth like a plain gold ring. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. If we could unmute and just give Chris a round of applause, that would be great.
Bravo, brava.
And the chat is open if you'd like to.
You just muted, Susanna.
Okay, so the chat is open. Maybe you've heard me say that, I don't know. But we're going to move on to the open mic. And Chris, thank you so much for your lovely, powerful work. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure and an honor to read with Michael and be part of this group. I love to do readings. My father, as you might guess, is a was an actor. And so I grew up with the sound of language being really important. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, speaking of sounds from the outside, I heard an alligator outside our condo last night, which was a little unnerving. Not the cute little Triller frogs.
Hey, Chris, have you ever been up to, you said you had relatives on the north of the Arctic? Have you ever been there?
Yes. It's
Wow.
I've been there twice. The first time before I had found my family, which was quite an event, and the second time after to meet a large number of people, people that I haven't met, and I wanted to go back, but the pandemic has made that impossible. So I'm hoping to go back maybe in the next year or two.
That's
It's a
great.
beautiful place. I would tell anybody to go there. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. Thanks, Lenny. All right, so let's move forward. I want to make a couple of announcements. Please prepare yourselves for our February 13th poetry reading, where we invite, it's 20 poets to read your favorite love poems, 2 per poet. And it can be 2 of your own if they're your favorite, or other poets who have written love poems that you particularly love. So that's the day before Valentine's Day, and then we will celebrate it with love poems. And again, I'll send out an announcement, but it's going to be, we'll have space for 20 poets to bring either their work or somebody else's work that they really love forward. So looking forward to that in February. And in January, Judy and I will be reading probably mostly new work, but some old favorites as well. So the January 12th is the reading where Judy and I will be reading our work. And so we're looking forward to that, and I hope you are too. All right, so let me just give you